Today we're talking about questions and not questions. So I think last week we had a similar topic that we spoke about a little bit, but today we're going to speak about this with more detail. So first we need to talk about how we make questions so we can understand when we do not make questions, so we can understand how to answer these questions. So in general, there are two usual ways that we make questions. There are some other ways too, but right now we're going to talk about the main two types of questions. It's to be and not to be, like Shakespeare. To be and not, or not to be. So this is actually important in English grammar because to be has different grammar than every other verb that's not to be. So when we talk about making a question with the verb to be, we need to have the verb and then the subject. Verb plus subject. And sometimes we also have a question, word, or phrase at the beginning. Sometimes. Actually, let's go ahead and say like this. So not always, but sometimes we have it. Great. So for example, we could say, are you hungry? Are you tired? Are you an English teacher? Right? We could use this kind of question. A verb is the action that we do, and the subject is the person or the thing doing the action, right? So we could say, for example, I am hungry, not a question, because we have subject and then verb. I am, right? So this is not a question, but if we change it, am I, this is a question. So we have, are you hungry? Yes, I am hungry, or no, I am not hungry. Or we can have a question word or a question phrase in the beginning. So we could say, how old are you? How old are you? In today's lesson, we're going to talk about turning questions into noun phrases. So taking a question and making it not a question. For example, here we said, how old are you? We have the question word or phrase. Then we have the verb, and then we have the subject. Right? Question word or this is a question phrase. How old? Like if we say, how much? How many? Right? These are all question phrases. Sometimes a question phrase is longer. How many dogs and cats? This could be a question phrase. How many people in Sweden? This could be a question phrase. Okay, so we have question phrase, verb, and subject. This is a question. But what if I say in the beginning, I don't know? This means it's not a question, right? For example, how old is Mike? I don't know how old Mike is. We need to change the order of the words, right? Because this is not a question. So we need to change the order. So because it's not a question, we say subject and then verb. Mike is. But when it's a question, we say the verb and then the subject. Is Mike? Right? So the verb to be, it's easy. We just have verb and subject, and this is easy, right? Usually. So we could say, how old is Mike? I don't know how old Mike is. how old Mike is. Or I don't care how old Mike is. Or I don't want to know how old Mike is. Right? We can say something in the beginning and then use this phrase, but it's not a question. So this is with the verb to be. But most verbs are not the verb to be. So for every other verb, run, think, jump, swim, sleep, do, have, for all other verbs, not to be, and we have a different structure, a different format. So again, we can have a question, word, or phrase. Question, word, or phrase. Then we have a helping verb. Then we have the subject, and then we have the main verb. So just to write it again in one line, question, word, or phrase, helping verb, subject, and main verb. For example, we could say, do you like pizza? Do you like? Do you like dogs? Do you like cats? Do you like cars? Do you like? Here we have a helping verb, subject, and the main verb. So this question is about liking something. It's about like, because that's the main verb. It's not about do. Do is just helping us make a question, right? It's a helping verb. The main verb is like. Do you like? Do you go to school? Do you have a car? Do you walk with your dog in the morning? Do you sleep in a bed? Right? We could ask lots of questions and just change the main verb. And we can also have a question, word, or phrase. Like here we say, how often? How often do you eat pizza, for example? How often, question word, do, helping verb, you, subject, eat, main verb. Right? Question, helping verb, subject, main verb. So every other verb that is not to be, it works like this. But what if we don't want to say a question, right? So we can, it's a question because we said, how often do you eat? But if we want to make it so it's not a question, we can say, for example, I don't know how often Mike eats pizza. I don't know how often Mike eats pizza. How often does Mike eat pizza? I don't know how often Mike eats pizza. Right? So it's not a question. Mike eats pizza, not a question. Does Mike eat pizza? Question. Right? We have a helping verb here. And we create a question like this. I see Jose says, when do we use to be and when do we use not to be? So when the verb in the sentence, the main verb is to be. So to be is like I am, you are, he is, right? So we know that am and are and is, this is the verb to be. And if we use these words, then we should use to be structure. But here, the main verb is like. That's not the verb to be. Here, the main verb is eat. It's not the verb to be. Or if the verb is have, like to have a car or to have a job, then we say, do you have a job? Because the main verb is have. It's not to be. Right? Okay, great. So sometimes a person will ask us a question and we can answer them with the same words, but not a question, right? That's what I'm doing now. I'm showing you. I said, how often does Mike eat pizza? So we want to save these words. How often Mike eat, right? We can use the same words and say something that's not a question. So how often does Mike eat pizza? I don't know how often Mike eats pizza. Or I don't care how often Mike eats pizza. Or I don't want to know how often Mike eats pizza. Or I never think about how often Mike eats pizza. Right? So I say some sentence and create a special phrase at the end of the sentence. And this special phrase is from the question that the person asked me. So if I said, where is John from? Where is John from? How can we change this and make it not a question? You can try to answer this question in the chat.